So, am I transgender? Not an easy answer to this. Hey folks, it's Finn. Welcome back, lovely people. Lovely to see you as always, and thank you for tuning in. Look, the lovely Christopher cut my hair, so I'm looking a little bit more respectable this week. So, this week's video is quite a philosophical, reflective one, because this week I'm going to be answering a question that I've been asked a few times about if I still identify as transgender even though I have finished my entire gender transition. Prepare for a waffle. If you are new to me, welcome. My name is Finn, and here on my channel and my accompanying blog, I make content on gender transition, gender surgery, LGBT life and mental health. So if you're umming and ahhing about whether you want to subscribe, now is the time to do so. Because subscribing really does help to support my channel and make sure that you don't miss any of the regular Finstalments. So, am I transgender? Not an easy answer to this. I'm going to start by saying that the answer I'm going to give is my personal answer. You could come at this from a kind of academic debate, but actually I just want to come at it from my own view. Because at the end of the day, that is actually what's important. With any label, it is about how an individual chooses to define themselves. Nobody should ever define you except you. You are free to choose and to refuse labels that don't work for you. So, when talking about how I feel about myself and being transgender, it is just my view. And I always like to hear yours. So I finished my gender transition 2 years ago now. My gender transition involved cross-sex hormones, so testosterone. It also involved top surgery and lower surgery as well. I've had phalloplasty. And that for me was the end of my gender transition. Now, this isn't the same for every trans person. As a transgender person, we are free to transition in whichever way works for us. Some people don't even have hormones. Some people have hormones and just top surgery. You just choose whatever you need to feel comfortable in the gender that you know that you are. So now that I am done that transgender cake, why do I still refer to myself as transgender? Okay, so to answer this question, I'm going to go back to the very beginning. I actually feel very different now about words and about how I define myself than I did at the beginning of my transition. And that's because, you know, as a community we've evolved in the language we use, and as a person I've evolved as the language I use. And I came out as transgender in 2011, and I came out as transgender. But actually now, how I like to view that is I came out as male. Because actually, I have always been male. It is just my body that was transgender. Bear with me. For reasons that we still are not clear about, and I don't know if we ever will be clear about, there are people on this planet, who have always been here by the way, that are born with certain characteristics that seem to signal that they are either male or female. But actually those people grow up and realise that the gender they identify as isn't the one that was assigned at birth. We don't know why this happens. For some reason I was born with parts that are more commonly seen on women. I went through a female puberty and I grew breasts and all of those things, but I knew that I was male. Well, actually I didn't work that out till later on, but we'll come to that. Fast forward through years of torment of not knowing that I was trans, when it all made sense why I felt this awful pain inside my body, this complete mismatch between how people were relating to me, and I realised that I was transgender, I came out as transgender. But now reflecting on that, what actually was happening was I was realising that I was male. And transgender is just a term which explains this phenomenon, that a person is identified as one gender at birth and has the characteristics of that gender, but then identifies as a different gender, which is why you call people transgender. That's what transgender means. So that's how I moved on to understand it, that I was male, I'd always been male, and it was my body that was transgender, and that I needed to bring my body in line with my gender so that my external appearance reflected the truth of myself as male, And so that when I saw myself, it reflected my view of myself as male. Still with me? So technically, based on how I viewed things back then, I would say that I'm no longer transgender because I have transitioned my entire body. My external appearance is completely male. My body parts look the same as other males. So technically, I'm not transgender. In my own view, that is. But of course, there are plenty of people who don't have all the other surgeries. So does this mean that they are still transgender? Again, no or yes. It depends on how that person defines. What I actually mean by this is I no longer believe it's about your body being trans or not trans. So I've moved into a completely new understanding of the way I define transgender. And I think for me, what it means is I'm transgender until my body reflects how I see my gender. So if you're a transgender person that only needs to have hormones and then the rest of your body feels congruent, you finished your transition. You see what I mean? So if you're a trans person that just wants hormones and then top surgery and your lower area doesn't bother you and you're quite happy with what you've got, you finished your transition. So really, the concept of when you stop being transgender should really be defined by when a person gets to the end of a transition in the way that they see it ending. Once you reach a place of feeling comfortable in your appearance, with yourself and with the way people relate to you, that is your transition done, isn't it? And then you're no longer transgender because your gender and how you define yourself now feels congruent. When you reach congruence and you get rid of gender dysphoria, then that is gender transition done. I did say this was going to be a bit of a waffle. So that's how I now see the term transgender, that I'm only transgender for as long as I've got gender dysphoria and I need to change some things. Once I've changed everything I need to change and my gender dysphoria has gone, then my transition is done. So am I saying that I'm now no longer transgender? Well, this brings me on to another point. There is two ways to identify as transgender. It's an explanation, but it's also an identity. And for me personally, I'm really proud of my transgender identity. And so although I am 100% male, I've always been 100% male, I identify as transgender because my journey to malehood was different than a cisgender male. And because of that journey, I have certain strengths and skills and experiences that I'm really proud of. And also by identifying as transgender still, I can do work in the world to help improve trans people's lives and trans people's rights. And for me, it's a statement of power, of identity, a political statement that I come out as trans publicly to make a difference. I choose that label because it shouldn't be a shameful thing to be transgender. My goodness, to be born transgender and to go through all of those years of pain of trying to work through it is so hard. And the strength that we have to manage that in a world that is fundamentally against trans people in a real, quite violent way, takes courage, takes strength. And that's something to be really proud of. So it's a little bit like how I use my mental health troubles in being very open about it to remove shame. So that's why I still call myself transgender. I am male, end of, but I'm also transgender. I remain using that term so that I can continue to make a difference and also to feel empowered in my identity rather than ashamed of it. Did that make sense? So, fundamentally, my topmost identity is that I am male. I am really male. I've always been male, end of. But I choose to keep the label transgender because that explains my journey of malehood and it helps me to be proud and also to continue to make a difference in the world. I hope that long-winded, waffly answer helped. I know that this is a really, really big topic and it's got so many layers and there's so many different ways of viewing it. And as I said again, this is just my way. And I would love to hear how you all define yourself. What do you think about the term transgender? How do you use it or not use it? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, folks. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you next week.